Hey, good evening, Rabbi Glatstein. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome, everybody. We have an amazing topic tonight. We're continuing the Shiur on sefer Bamidbar, although tonight's Shiur, you'll see how closely related it is to the Parsha. The Shiur on sefer Bamidbar are sponsored by Dr. Zakheim and Mishpachta Le'nishmas of Shlomo Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, Le'nishmas Dr. Zakheim's mother, Rivka Bas Tzvi Halevi, and Rav David ben Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi HaKohen. The Shiur on sefer Bamidbar, also sponsored by my friend Rabbi Daniel Glatstein, Liloi Nishmas, his father Shabsi ben Yitzchak Isaac, whose yahrzeit was Tesvav Sivan. This week's Shiur is sponsored by Mishpachas Justman, Liloi Nishmas, Simcha Bunim, Lieberman, Zechatzak Levracha. Also, tonight's Shiur is dedicated by the Ryabinski and Ruzhin family as a chus for the Aliyah and learning of their grandchildren. They should see a lot of nachas from them. Okay, so this week's Parsha, we read about the following subject. The pasuk says, Vayizh mimenu shevi. They took a captive. So obviously we're going to speak about captives this week. Hostages is a topic that's on everybody's mind. As if like this is a new phenomenon, the Jewish hostages, and as we're going to see, the subject of Jewish hostages is unfortunately a topic that we had to deal with throughout the centuries. And I want to introduce tonight's topic. First, I want to mention that it's that time of year again. So our Beis HaKnesses is having its annual campaign this coming Motzei Shabbos for 48 hours. Baruch Hashem, we revealed the new plans for the expansion and refurbishing of the Beis HaMedrash. Please join us. The best thing you could do is, if you're able to make a team page, you could go to charity.com/MMH. But whatever you could do to be mishtatef is appreciated. I want to introduce tonight's topic by speaking about an individual, perhaps is not so well known, although over the years we've quoted many amazing things from him. His name is Reb Chaim Kohen. Who's Reb Chaim Kohen? Reb Chaim Kohen is the author of a sefer called Torah Barekes. Does that sound familiar? Torah Barekes. Not a type of food. Torah Barekes. Torah Barekes is a sefer written on Arachayim, which is Al Pi Kabbalah. He wrote a sefer on Shulchan Aruch Al Pi Kabbalah, and one of the great secrets that he reveals is one of my most favorite Mar Makaimas when it comes to the Yom Tov of Purim. Maybe you're familiar with it over the years. We've said it over many times. We know the Gemara tells us that we're Mevatel Talmud Torah to hear Megillas Esther. So why would that be? Why would we be Mevatel Talmud Torah to hear Megillas Esther? So the Torah Barekes, we're going to learn who he was a student of. Actually, he was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Vital. And he reveals something amazing. The Medrash says that in this world there are certain things that are noivlois. Noivlois are like a semblance of the real thing. So a dream is a semblance of prophecy. Or the sun is a semblance of the light above. Or honey is a semblance of the man. Or sleep is a semblance of death. And the Medrash says the Torah is a noivel, is a semblance of Chachma Ha'Alyona. So that itself is a bombshell. What do you mean? I would have thought the Torah is the highest level of wisdom. What does it mean that the Torah is a semblance of the Chachma Ha'Alyona? So what is the Chachma Ha'Alyona? So the Torah Barekes reveals the Chachma Ha'Alyona, Megillas Esther. And the Torah is just a semblance of Megillas Esther. So that's one of the amazing secrets that he reveals. And this secret explains a line in the Chassam Sofer where the Chassam Sofer writes that the light that is latent in Megillas Esther is actually greater than the light of the Torah itself, which is an astounding statement. How could you say such a thing? But we see it's rooted in the teachings of Reb Chaim Vital. So Reb Chaim HaKohen comes from Aram Tzova. Aram Tzova is Syria. And he's a student of Chaim Vital. He's the author of Torah Barekes. He published the sefer Toras Chacham. Now, there is a sefer out there called Migdal David on Rus. It's plagiarized from Reb Chaim Kohen. This is what the Chida writes. The Chida says that he saw that the Reb Chaim Kohen wrote on Yoredeya, and on he also wrote a chibur on Daled Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. He says the Chida, I saw the commentary Atera Zahav on Megillas Esther, which I recently got my hands on. Actually, I want to thank my friend Rabbi Yossi Brachfeld. I called him up yesterday. I said, "Do you have this book?" He said, "Yeah, he has a copy." I said, "I need it." He said, "When do you need it?" I said, "In a half hour." So he put in an Uber, and to get from Flatbush to 5 towns these days is like flying to Florida. It's only about 3 hours in the car. No, it's for some it's over an hour. I don't know, because they never did construction on the belt before. They have to do, I don't know what there is no construction, but they take their time over there. Anyway, so I got my hands on a reprint of Atera Zahav that was put out by Reb Shmaya Yitzchak Halevi, who I actually spoke to today, who's a big bucky in the Sfarim of the Chida. So this is the republishing of Atera Zahav. They did a beautiful job. Look how it's really a beautiful sefer. And there are 2 volumes. One is the Reb Chaim Kohen on the Megillah Al Pi Pshat, and one is Al Pi Pardes. He also, the Chida says, wrote a sefer on Koheles, Menoiras Zahav. He wrote a sefer, and he has many, many chiburim, many compilations. He arranged the Kavanas HaTfilah of the Arizal, and he passed away in Livorno. Says the Chida, Reb Chaim Kohen passed away in Livorno. Now, this year actually, I was in Italy. I went to Livorno, and in Livorno there's like a line of Rabbanim, all-star lineup, where the first kever is empty. You know why? Because the Chida was buried there, and they moved him. And on this line you have literally so many Gedolei Yisrael. For example, you have the Yad Malachi, and you have the Rabbi Yehuda Saraf that we're going to talk about, and you have a student of the Beis Yosef, and you have many, many eminent Gedolim. You have Rav Nunez Vayis, you have many others, and buried right there is Reb Chaim Kohen, the student of Reb Chaim Vital. And when I went to the kever Reb Chaim HaKohen, it was very moving to me, because all the years I always said over from him this Chiddush on Megillas Esther, and there he is, he's buried in Livorno on the iconic row where the Chida used to be buried. It really is an amazing thing. So what's today's topic? Today we're talking about pirates. Which pirates? The pirates of Malta. Why? Because I'm going there in 2 weeks. And at first, I thought there were going to be a bunch of kvarim, because we were going to go to the coast of Italy, we're going to go to islands in Greece and Malta. And I had a lot of Gedolim I want to visit. I have a sefer at home. Now I have to tell you, this is not a vacation for me. It's far from it. I wanted to go. I have a sefer of probably thousands of achronim that lived in Greece between 1492 and 1590. Not tens, not hundreds. In fact, the center of Torah in the world between 1492 and 1590 was Greece, was Salonika. So I have a lot of, for example, did you ever hear the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo? Oh yeah, he lived in Sfas. Yeah, after he lived in Salonika, he lived in Sfas. You ever hear of L'chadoidi L'kraskal, Rav Shlomo Al-Kabitz? All these Gedolim, they started off in Greece. They made their way from Spain to Greece. Many of them went to Tzfas, many of them remained in Salonika. Near Greece is an island called Malta. I'm pretty sure I saw in the writings of the Chida that he was accosted by the pirates of Malta. I couldn't find exactly where. But I was doing some research, and the Reb Chaim Kohen, the student of Reb Chaim Vital, he wrote a drashas called Torah Chacham. In the Torah Chacham, he wrote a whole hakdama. Now, you have over here number 2, you see the print? It's not the easiest print to make heads or tails of, right? This is the hakdama of Reb Chaim Kohen to the Torah Chacham. So I figured, I called my friend Yossi Brachfeld, get me the sefer Atera Zahav, because I see something here something about when Reb Chaim Kohen printed Atera Zahav is a little bit hard to read. I bet in the new volume, if there's a good story, they quote it here. Sure enough, it was in here. It's in the new volume. So you have the good print in number 3. But in number 3, I'll tell you the truth, they didn't bring the whole story. So it's important to exercise. We spoke about that last week. Also to exercise your eyes. When you strain to read this, you exercise your eyes. I don't know if it's a good kind of exercise or a bad kind of exercise, but to understand the story, basically the story goes like this. He says, Shalom Aleichem, my name is Chaim HaKohen. He's the son of Avram HaKohen, who's the son of Yitzchak HaKohen, who's the son of Avram HaKohen. By the way, Avram HaKohen is buried next to Yechezkel HaNavi. Now, where's Yechezkel HaNavi buried? You know where? In Iraq, in Bavel. In fact, I have a beautiful biography on the Ben Ish Chai, compiled by Rav Yaakov Hillel. I highly recommend it. For many Friday nights, it was my favorite sefer. Every Friday night after the Suda, I would take it out. A beautiful coffee table edition of what life in Baghdad was in the 19th century. Pictures of like dozens of these chachamim with these white sweeping beard. It's remarkable. Now in Bavel, you have the kever of Yechezkel HaNavi. There are stories about when the Ben Ish Chai went to the kever of Yechezkel HaNavi. Who else is buried in Bavel? I believe Ezra HaSofer is buried in Bavel on the Tigris River. Anyway, he says his great-grandfather is buried next to Yechezkel HaNavi, the son of Yehuda HaKohen, the son of Doin Yosef HaKohen. And he goes on to say that he wanted to write Divrei Torah, what Hashem granted him, to be Mezakeh himself, to be Mezakeh the Rabbim. So therefore he finished a commentary on Shir HaShirim called Ateras, I think that says Shalom. And then he wrote a sefer on Eicha called, I think it says Megina Slave, because Megina Slave are an expression in Eicha. And then he wrote a sefer on Esther called Atera Zahav. Then I wrote a sefer on Rus called Toras Chesed. Then I wrote a sefer on Daniel called Ma'aseh or Ma'aser Chalamin. Now the reason we don't have these svarim. We do have Atera Zahav, but we don't have so far really any of the svarim he mentioned. Then I wrote a sefer on Koheles called Menoras Zahav. Then I wrote a sefer on Eoiv and on Yeshaya. Okay, and then I decided, I want to print them. So I'm going to start with Esther. Why? It's small, and it's a siman for all the miracles and salvations Hashem brought to the Jewish people. And all haschalas kashos. So I sent a shliach with my manuscripts. Go print it. I don't know where he was going to print it. Maybe in Italy, maybe in Salonika. Doesn't say where he was going to print it. And Reb Chaim Cohen is like, it's not like he's getting an email, after a month. Everything's going well. We're up to page 17. I bother the printers. I haven't gotten an update in a week. If I don't hear from them, I'm on top of them. But this is back in the 17th century. So Reb Chaim Cohen says, I haven't heard from them for years. So he said I had no choice. I wrapped up all my kisvei yad on Koheles, on Daniel, on Yeshaya, on Eoiv, on Rus. And in my haste, I made a big mistake. I didn't make a copy of them. He took all of his kisvei yad, and he set sail to publish his svarim. And when he was in the dock, it's unclear exactly how this happened. His boat was overtaken by the pirates of Malta, and they were going to kill him. And he was waiting there for 5 days without any hope. And what happened? Now you could read the clearer print in number 3. He says, "V'nesa'acher kol kach mida'aga." Let's see where he says, "Vayihi me'roiv hadaga v'hashachayra shagaru lila hishgachti lahatik hasfarim elu kedei shalal laharach zman." He didn't want to waste any time, so he went into the sea. And he waited there 5 days without any hope. And all of a sudden, a pirate ship from Malta came, and the Arelim Gavro Yad, and says to Reb Chaim Cohen, I didn't know what to do. I had no choice. I jumped overboard into the sea, and the water was threatening to drown me. And somehow, some why, I was saved. Me and my son, I was saved. And all my Sfarim were lost. Lo nishar ela echad bahem. I only was left with one. We don't know which one it is. I don't think we know which one it is. I know we have Atar Zav. I know we have Tor Barakes. I'm not sure if we have the one on Rus. I never saw it. And says Rav Chaim Kohen, miraculously Hashem saved me, but I was in starvation, I was in hunger, and we landed on top of a mountain on a Friday night, and we were there for 48 hours, and I lost all the Svarim that it took me 20 years to write, day and night. And he says, miraculously he was saved. He decided he's going to slowly start writing the Svarim. It doesn't say which ones he did write, but this is the story. This is one of the encounters we have with the pirates of Malta. You know, I don't think most people are familiar that these pirates ever existed. Malta was some kind of autonomous country in the 18th and 17th century. They had a formidable navy. That's what they called it. We call them pirates, where they just looted and took people, they captured people. And we're going to learn about a number of Gedolei Yisrael. Some you may have heard of, some you may not have heard of, that were actually held hostage in jail in Malta by pirates, and how they were or were not redeemed. That's the subject of tonight's share. But a little bit more about Rav Chaim Kohen. So in the Chidah Sefer Magal Tov, in his entry for Taf Kuf Yadalad, that's 1754, the 11th day of Cheshvan, the Chidah writes about he got a hold of the Sefer Torah's Chacham of Reb Chaim Kohen and Vinishtashati by, he delighted in it. In the Chidah Sefer Midbar Kedemais, which is an encyclopedia of different ideas and different teachings, in the entry for the letter Shin, we know the Yom Tif, we just had the Yom Tif of Shavuos, is called, literally Shavuos means weeks. You know, but the story goes that one year, Reb Tzvi Horowitz, the father of Shmuel Shmelka and Reb Pinchas, he says, you know, the Yom Tif of Shavuos is coming. This is on the second day of Pesach. Which Masechta should we learn? So Shmuel Shmelka said, we should learn Masechta. Shavuos is coming. We should learn Masechta Shavuos. So the father said, you know, I hate to break it to you, but the Masechta Shavuos is not about the Yom Tif of Shavuos. It's about oaths. It's about oaths. So he said, I know. The Rebbeinu Shalom, when he gave us the Torah, he made us swear we're going to keep the Torah. So Reb Chaim Kohen, in the Sefer Tor Barakes, explains the reason why the Yom Tov of Shavuos is called Shavuos is because Rebbeinu Shalom swore he would never exchange us, and we also swore that we're not going to exchange him. The Chidah quotes this from Harav Ir V'Kadish. Ir V'Kadish is an expression from Sefer Daniel. It means an angel. Ir, an awake one, someone who never sleeps. V'Kadish, a holy one. He quotes the Sefer Tor Barakes. Okay, now here's the next part of the journey. So I'm trying to do some research on the pirates of Malta. So I'm looking around, and the only real information I see about it is was written by Meir Benayahu. Meir Benayahu is an eminent historian. He wrote a sefer called a sefer of Zikaron for somebody who passed away. And in it, he has a chapter on the Gedolim that were captured by the pirates of Malta. But I was trying to get a hold of the sefer. So I looked around. He once wrote a sefer called Dar Echad Ba'aretz. How do you get it? I called up the stores. It's not available. You can't get it. There's something called the World Sephardic Library in Eretz Yisrael, and they have copies, and you could order it. So I figured I'll take a chance. I'll order it. The shipping, this is like 2 weeks ago. I know I once sent a sefer to Northeast India. I sent it in Elul, and the recipient got it Pesach time. So I figured, I'll take my chances with the shipping. Baruch Hashem, I got it a few days ago. I was trying to figure out what to speak about, and once the sefer came, I figured I'm for sure using the sefer. It came in like many bubble wraps, it came very nicely wrapped. And there's a chapter in this sefer called Igrois L'Chachmei Eretz Yisrael Shenishbu B'Malta. Letters to the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael who were captured in Malta. Okay? So there were many Gedolim that were captured by pirates in the 17th century, and they were held captive in Malta. Many of these Gedolim the Chidah speaks about, and some of them are somewhat unknown. Now, in some of these cases, we'll have to try to figure out what were these Gedolim doing, voyaging past the Greek islands. What were they doing there? Why were they traveling in that direction? Now, the center of Jewish power in that time was in Italy, in Venice. And the Av Bezdin in Venice was, if you look at number 7, was a great rabbi by the name of Reb Shmuel Abuhav. He was the Av Bezdin in Venice. He lived in the times of the Gidulei Truma. Gidulei Truma was Rav Azaria Figo. He also, you ever hear the sefer Bina La'itim? Bina La'itim is considered the first sefer of Drush. It's the most classic sefer of Drush, the earliest sefer of Drush. And he lived in the times of Gidulei Truma. In the times of the Knesset HaGdoila, he wrote Shalsa Tshuvas Dvar Shmuel, and from Venice, he was like appointed to be the guardian of all people who were taken captive. He raised the money for them, he wrote letters to them. It was very important that whoever was captured knew that the Jewish community was concerned for them, knew about them, and was trying to get them out. Otherwise, they would just throw in the towel and that would be the end of them. Now, in Italy in the time, there was a great chevra of Pidyon Shvuyim, which was established by the Sfardim and the Levant community. And we have a record between 1671 and 1710 of over 500 different documents that involved the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim, which was one of the greatest mitzvahs that they considered being privileged to be involved in. Now we have many letters. The letters were written to a couple of the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael who were captured in Malta, primarily between the years 1647 and 1666. We're going to see the names of these Gedolim: Reb Chaim Navarro, Reb Shmuel Garmazian. Okay. Other Gedolim who were captured: Reb Yehuda Saraf. That name should be familiar to you. And Reb Yisrael Binyamin. Now these Gedolim were all held hostage. In many of the situations, there were other people being held hostage with them. There's a record that sometimes there was as many as 24 hostages, sometimes a few others. Okay. For example, in 1672, the pirates of Malta captured 9 people. Now, the money that they used to redeem these captives came from communal donations, and the money was not just used to redeem the captives per se, but even before they were redeemed, they needed to have people, so to speak, hovering by the jails, so that the Maltan government knew that their communities back home were concerned for them. Now, after 1648, 1649, there were Jewish captives all over the world. Because of the Chmielnicki pogroms, it was rampant. Before then, primarily, the captives were held in Malta. Now, this is the procedure that they were able to redeem these captives in Malta after they were captured by the pirates. So the pirates would come, they would take these people hostage, bring them back to the jails. So back in Malta, you would have a soichein. The soichein was, so to speak, the middleman. The middleman between the rabbis back in Venice and the Maltan government. The middleman did not have to be a Jew. They often used an upstanding citizen who they trusted to, so to speak, negotiate the freedom from with the government. Now, the main soichen, the main middleman, was an Orel, a Christian by the name of Baccio Bandinelli. He was the main middleman of the rabbis of Venice. He was a wealthy guy. He was an international financier, and they trusted him. And now they had to be very careful. They had to establish very precise rules of how much money they could spend to redeem a captive, because they can't start getting into bidding wars. Because the moment they're going to fall prey, let's say they say we're only going to pay $10,000. The moment they say really we want $10,500, then ein ladavar sof. There's no end, and then there's no way they could ever redeem anyone. There were times where they gave Baccio Bandinelli, so to speak, the discretion for certain people to add to the price that he would pay to redeem these captives. Now, Baccio Bandinelli was... Now, there's another thing. They needed another middleman to be the middleman between them and Baccio. That person was an individual by the name of Moshe Azulai, who, when Baccio Bandinelli was getting older, they needed to replace him, and through Rav Moshe Azulai, no relation to the Chida, they had to find other replacements. Okay. Now, Jewish prisoners always cost more money to redeem than the Muslim prisoners. So these Christian knights, they took Muslims, they took Jews. The Muslims they didn't go for a high price, but the Jewish people, because they knew the community backed them, would go for a much higher price. They set the standard price at something called Mea Realim. I guess that's a certain currency, a certain coin. But as the years went on, they would up it to between 100 and 200. There was one individual that they were willing to pay all the money in the world for. His name was Rav Shmuel Garmaizian. He's a name which is unheard of. Nobody ever really, I don't think you ever heard of Rav Shmuel Garmaizian. I know you know the last name, perhaps. But Shmuel Garmaizian was, in his time, the most prolific writer of Sfarim. We're going to see his literary output was unparalleled in the history of Jewish people. Unfortunately, none of his Sfarim were ever published. So he was the most prolific writer, but none of the Sfarim were ever published. So this is a little bit of a record from Meir Benayahu of the various letters Reb Shmuel Abuhav would write to these Gedolim. He wrote to them constantly. He would write to them, I hope by the time I receive your letter, we're successful in freeing you. But that's how he spent his time. He gave everything he had to raise money from his own sources, from his own family, and to constantly write to these people. So if you look at number 8, one of the Rabbanim who was captured by these pirates, Reb Chaim Navarro. If you look, I have over here a copy of the letter of Shmuel Abuhav wrote to Reb Chaim Navarro. And the next Gadol who was captured by the pirates of Malta was Reb Shmuel Garmaizian. The Chidah says about him, he was one of the Rabbanim of Yerushalayim. The Chidah says, I saw the roster of the rabbis of Yerushalayim. You could tell by where you sign on the document what your rank is. So the Chidah says, I saw the rank of the Rabbanim of Yerushalayim, Rav Shlomo Al-Ghazi number 1, and Rav Shmuel Garmaizian number 2, Harav Hamogeh number 3, Mari Chagiz number 4, Rabbi Yitzchak Beton number 5. So obviously he was among the Gedol Yisrael. He was from the greatest. Look what the Chidah writes. Rav Shmuel Garmaizian Hifli Lasois Shitois Al Kol HaTalmud. He wrote something similar to Shita Mekubetzes, but Shita Mekubetzes is not on all the Masechtas. It's on Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, a lot on Ksubis, and a few other small Masechtas. However, Shmuel Garmaizian wrote a Shita on all the Masechtas of Shas. Not only that, he wrote a parish on Zroim. He wrote a parish on Taros. He wrote on Masechta Brachos. He wrote a commentary on the entire Shas Al Pi Kabbalah. He wrote 45 drashas on all the parshiyos. He wrote biurim on Daled Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. He wrote Shalos Tshuvos. He wrote Sifrei Poskim. Davar Pela Asher Pava Asa. Rabim Loy Yatsa La'ar Hadfush Shum Sefer. We don't have one published sefer of Rav Shmuel Garmaisin. Here he's one of the all-time most prolific writers. We don't have one sefer from him. And many of his writings got lost and scattered over the time. And then again, the Chida writes that this Rav Shmuel Garmaisin began in Salonika, and then he came to Yerushalayim. And Davar Pella, what he wrote was wondrous. In any event, he was somebody of the caliber that even though they had a rule, a hard and set rule, they're not paying more than 100 rialas for Rav Shmuel Garmaisin, they gave discretion to the middleman to basically give. Now, Rav Shmuel Abuhav was a little bit in a quandary because, once you're willing to go up, then how do you evaluate people's worth? So he said, look, from the tzibur, they just have to collect the standard amount. And then Rav Shmuel Abuhav, on his own, from his own pockets and his own family, he privately collected for the release of Rav Shmuel Abuhav. Now, the next captive, to me, is probably the most interesting.
Did you explain what they were doing in these areas to be captured?
Okay, so the Gedolim that we spoke about until now, they were shluchim of their various communities. Shluchim means they were sent to collect money for, let's say, they came from Tzfas. They were, well, first of all, Reb Chaim Kohen, we know why he left. He left to publish his sefarim. Okay, so where was he going? Salonika or Livorno, to a city that has printing presses. Where Reb Shmuel Garmaisin was going, he was a shliach on behalf of his community to raise funds for the yeshivas. The next individual was an extremely eminent chacham. His name was Rabbi Yehuda Saraf. He's also mentioned by the Chida. He's a Talmud of Rav Zrachyahu Guta. He was in Mitzrayim. He wrote a Haskama to the sefer Kisei HaKavod. You know who he was the Rebbe of? He's the Rebbe of the Pri Chadash. So when I was in Livorno, in that all-star lineup, buried next to the Chida, Rabbi Yehuda Saraf was there. Now, I had been in Livorno many years ago, and I saw Rabbi Yehuda Saraf's kever. At the time, I honestly never heard of him. But I tried to file away in my mind the name, Yehuda Saraf, Yehuda Saraf, Yehuda Saraf. So, before I went the second time, looked in cup that I think I saw somebody, Yehuda Saraf. I did some research about him, so when I saw his kever there, it was very meaningful to me. He was the Rebbe of the Pri Chadash. The Chida says about him something out of this world. The Chida says that the Maram Chabiv says that there were two Gedolei Hadar, Mahara ben Chananya and Rabbi Yehuda Sarafi. Says the Chida about Rabbi Yehuda Saraf, look at the first words in number 11, Rav Gadol. That's not a common phrase that the Chida says about every rabbi. Rav Gadol, great rabbi. So why was he traveling from Eretz Yisrael, and why did he get captured? We have an amazing report. This is a very a wondrous sefer, a very powerful sefer. This is a sefer of the most outspoken Gadol, and at the time, one of the only the Gedolim who saw through Shabtai Tzvi and wrote vehemently against him. At the time, Shabtai Tzvi won over almost everybody. There was one Gadol who had the courage to be outspoken against him from the beginning, in his time, not afterwards. Rabbi Yaakov Sasportas. Okay? Rabbi Yaakov Sasportas wrote a sefer, Tzitzas Noivel Tzvi. And he writes about, there were 3 Chachamim who were sent from Yerushalayim. When Shabtai Tzvi came to Yerushalayim, they sent him away in Bizyonos. But afterwards they started hearing about his miraculous feats and his supposed prophecy. They had Chalishas Hadas, that they didn't treat him respectfully. So they sent 3 eminent Rabbanim to ask Shabtai Tzvi for Mechila. And Rabbi Yaakov Sasportas does not say who those 3 eminent Rabbanim were. And he says they were sent from Yerushalayim to
where?
To Shabtai Tzvi in Smyrna. Yeah? Izmir is Smyrna. Right? And to ask Mechila on behalf of the Anshe Yerushalayim that they didn't believe in him, they didn't believe in his prophecy. And on the way, these rabbis were met by Sfinois Malta. They were met by the pirates. And they were captured. And one of them came to Livorno. And when he came to Livorno, he said, you know what? Everything Shabtai Tzvi said was true. But we don't know who these three Rabbanim were. However, in this sefer that just arrived this week, Meir Benayahu proves through many different letters that among these three Rabbanim was Rabbi Yehuda Saraf, one of the great Gedolim of the time, who there were many, almost all the Rabbanim of the time, they accepted him. Not at first, but he was sent as an emissary on behalf of Yerushalayim to ask Shabtai Tzvi Mechila. Now, Meir Benayahu says, in his opinion, he was captured after he met Shabtai Tzvi, not before. But you could read here about the various details and how he pieces this together. But one thing we know about Rabbi Yehuda Saraf is that when he came to Livorno and he became the rabbi, he became the Rebbe of the Pri Chadash. Pri Chadash was a very young man when he learned from Rabbi Yehuda Saraf. Some say he was only 15 years old. This sefer says he was probably 18 or 19. They would come to Rabbi Yehuda Saraf and they would ask him. For example, there was a great rabbi by the name of Reb Meir Roifei. And he says, Rabbi Yehuda, teach me the Kabbalah of the Arizal. No more. The moment he came to Livorno, maybe he realized, he and tell us about he never said a word about Shabtai Tzvi, and he never said a word about Kabbalah again. So it's very interesting. Many Rabbanim write that Rabbi Yehuda Saraf, Hutzur Chalomish, he's a powerful stone. Einoi roitza afilu lilmoid besifrei harav HaKadosh Hari be'elas. He will not teach anybody anything of the Kabbalah. It's very interesting. He says here, "Belivarno here b'tzayra avol sirei v'lamed es Kabbalah Sari v'loy amar davar be'inyane hashabtiyos." So this is an amazing twist in history, because actually, if you look in the Chida's account of Rabbi Yehuda Saraf, he in number 11 in the Shem HaGdolim, the Chida says v'halach b'shlichos. Usually, if somebody went to collect money for the yeshivas, the Chida would say, he went, lahachzik Torah. Now, he went on a mission. What's the mission? He doesn't say what the mission is. But that also is somewhat supportive of this idea that when Rabbi Yaakov Sisportas writes, the three Chachamim from Yerushalayim were sent to ask Shabtai Tzvi for Mechila, that's pretty... So anyway, this was a very interesting era in Jewish history, where the seas were festering with these pirates, and the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim was a great mitzvah. The Gemara Bava Basra says that taking somebody out of captivity is analogous to saving them from death, saving them from starvation, saving them from not having clothing. Basically, everything is included in captivity, and this was a mitzvah that the Jews of Venice were very involved in, led by none other than Reb Shmuel Abuhav. So in this week's Parsha, there was only one captive. Rashi says, Vayish mimenu shevi shivcha achas, Rashi says. But throughout history, this was a very common occurrence. Actually, it's interesting.
So then how do you say, okay, enough's enough, we're not going to give more? Where do you draw the line?
Well, that's a big discussion in the Gemara and Gittin. The Gemara and Gittin says they made a takana that ein poidin es hashvuim yeser mikadei demeyan. We don't redeem captives for more than their value. Why? The Gemara gives two reasons. One reason is delay legarbi tfei, because if we pay them too much, they're going to keep on doing it. And another reason is because of duchka de tzibura, because it's putting too much pressure on the tzibur. People send their kids to yeshivas, have to pay bikur chaylim, hachnasas kala. So the question is, what about if somebody's a gadol hadar? Do these svaras apply? What if somebody's life is on the line? Do these svaras apply? There are many different exceptions. There are 2 Tosfosin and Gittin. The 2 Tosfosin each give 2 exceptions. One of them is repeated. So that's a topic we've spoken about in the past. But Be'ezus Hashem, in the merit of learning about this topic, Hashem should return all the Shavuye Yisrael, and we should be zoicha to only B'suras Tayvais. Have a good night, everyone. Shkayach.
Why would these Gedolim put themselves into a sakana?
What?